Hi guys, today we are going to talk about dividing fractions using models. And you're going to see that it's going to be very similar. A lot of parts of this is going to really kind of feel like when we were dividing decimals, because fractions and decimals are really the same thing, parts of a whole. And there's also going to be a connection to when we were multiplying fractions. So there are parts that are going to be the same for both of these that you're going to find very similar, but there are some subtle changes here. So let's look at our first problem, and if you're following along, it's on the companion guide that you've gotten for quadrant 1. We're going to do the front side in this video together, so follow along, work it out with me. And the back will be what you do on your own, and the back is also quadrant 2. So we're going to take care of 2 quadrants here in this video, hopefully, right? Just like when we were multiplying with fractions, the models we make, the rectangles we use for these models are going to be determined by our denominators, okay? So here I have a 2 and a 3. Just like when we were dividing with decimals, the question we're going to ask ourselves is, how many times does 1/3 go into 1/2? So I want to know what is 1/2, okay? And remember, because our denominators dictate the dimensions of our rectangle, I am going to have a 2 by 3 rectangle, okay? But just like with decimals, I'm going to draw this model twice. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I want to know how many times 1/3 goes into 1/2. Well, I need to know how big is 1/3. Remember, this is the height here, or width of our rectangle is 2, because that is the whole that I have that's being divided by the 1/3. And then the width here is 3 long, because 1/3, I have 1 out of a total of 3. So 3 is telling us how many makes the whole for this fraction. So to get started, I'm going to look for 1/2. And instead of shading in 1/2, well, I could shade in 1/2. I'm going to shade it in with the yellow, so I know 1/2 is actually how many pieces? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now let's look here at my second model. I want to know 1/3. Well, look at your first row. That means I'm going to take 1 out of 3 on the first row and 1 out of 3 on the second row to make up 1/3. And I'm going to look and notice that there are 2 squares that make up 1/3. So that means for 1/3 to go into whole time, it needs to have 2 squares to go into. So if I'm looking here, 1/3 goes in once, but it can't go in the second time because I don't have 2 more squares left. So it can go in one whole time. And how much of 1/3 do I have left over? Well, out of the 2 pieces I need, I have 1 of those pieces. So 1/2 divided by 1/3 is going to equal, it goes in one whole time, and then it can go in a half of a time, but it can't go in a whole second time because we would need 1 more square for that. So 1/2 divided by 1/3 is 1 1/2. Now let's look at number 2. For number 2, we have 1/2 again, but this time we're going to divide it by 4/5. Again, these denominators determine the dimensions of my model. So here I have a model that's going to be 2, let me grab a marker here, 2 by 5. And I'm looking at only 1/2 of it. That's what I have. I have 1/2, And I want to know how many times does 4/5 go into that? Well, I need to know what 4/5 is. So I'm going to redraw my model again. And for each row, I'm going to shade in 4 out of 5. So I've shaded in 4 on the top. I'm going to shade in 4 on the second. And all together, that makes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces. Well, I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces for a whole. I need 8 pieces for a whole, but I only have 5. I don't even have one whole 4/5 that I can take. So in that case, I say, well, I have 5, but I need 8 to make a whole. So 4/5 goes into 1/2, not even one whole time. It goes in 5/8 of a time. And that's okay. I can have fractions. Remember when we were doing decimals and we looked at the numbers? 1/2 was bigger than 1/3, so that gave me a whole number or a mixed number. But when my divisor is smaller than my dividend, my quotient is going to be less than 1. Remember doing that with when we did that with decimals? Same rules apply here for fractions. Okay? All right, let's check out number 3. Number 3, and again, if you think you've got this, you can go ahead and pause at any point and give it a shot. I'm here. You can just press play if you get stuck. I'll be here to help you, I promise. Okay? So here we go. Again, I am going to use my denominators to help determine the dimensions of the rectangles I use for my models. All right? So 5 by 6. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by 6. Okay? And of those 5 rows, I'm only looking at these 2. So how many pieces does it take? Am I going to need to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm going to need a total of 12 pieces to make one whole. And because I don't know how many pieces yet I'm going to need to make 1/6, I'm going to draw the model again. And I'm going to shade in. See how each row has 6 pieces? I'm going to shade in 1 of each of those 6 pieces per row. So that gives me a total of 5 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 squares. So every 5 squares is going to give me 1/6. Every 12 squares is what I need to make a whole. So I think I can make a couple holes here. So let's look. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 1. And because I have another one, I'm going to use another color. And I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 2. So I'm using 2 different colors to help me, just like when we did decimals, to remember how many there are. Okay? So right now, 1/6 can go into 2/5, 2 whole times, but look, it can't go in a third because I only have 2 out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of the 5 pieces I need. So 1/6 can go into 2/5, 2 whole times, and 2/5 of a third time. Okay. All right. Let's look at number 4. Now 4 is going to look a little different, doesn't it? So for number 4, we have 3 And we're going to divide it by 1 1/3. So, what are we going to do here? Don't fear. It's all, we're doing the same exact thing as always. We first need to know our denominators. Well, what's our denominator for 3? Well, the denominator is going to be 1. Okay? All right. So that tells me that my model needs to be made up of 1/3 rectangles. Okay? How many 1/3s do I have? 3 of them. So I'm going to make 1, 2, 3 rectangles. So I have all 3 of these. That's what I've ended up with. And I want to break it into groups of 1 1/3. Okay, well, let's look. How do I do this? So what would be 1 and what would be 1/3? Well, let's go back to thinking, what is 1? Well, 1 would be made up of 3 pieces, right? So I'm still going to use my 1/3, okay? And I'm going to take 1 whole of those, and that's going to take care of this 1 here. But I need another third, so I'm going to need to draw a second model here. And out of the 3 pieces, I'm only going to take 1. So now I've taken care of my 1/3. Well, how many pieces does it take to make up 1 1/3? Well, if I count them, 1, 2, 3, 4. It takes 4 pieces to make up 1 1/3. So let's start shading in our 4 pieces. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I got to go on to the second model to get my 4th one. So that's 1 time. And I'm going to use a different color because I'm going into it a second time. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 2 times 1 1/3 can go in. But look, I still have this one little piece here. I need 4, but I only have 1. So 1 1/3 can go into 3 2 whole times because I have 2 different colors. And 1 out of the 4 I need to make a third. So 3 divided by 1 1/3, or 1 1/3, goes into 3 2 1/4 times. Okay, let's look at our final problem on the front of this page. Again, this one is going to need multiple models. I've got 1 3/4, and I'm dividing it by 3/4. Okay? So this is pretty easy because look, there you go. 4/4, denominators are the same. I'm going to make a 4/4. Oops, let me use my marker here so it shows up better. 4/4. Okay, and because I want 1 whole, I'm going to shade in all of that model. And for my second, because I need 3/4 of it, I'm going to do another 4/4 here, but I'm only going to shade in 3 of my rows because I only want 3/4 of that model. Okay, again, because I want 3/4, I'm going to, I want to know how many times does 3/4 go in, so I'm going to take my model and I'm going to shade in 3/4 of it, which is 3, 6, 9, 12 pieces. So I want to know how many times I can put 12 pieces in. So I can go in once, there's 12 pieces, twice, and then up 4 out of the 12 I need to do the next one. So 1 3/4 goes into 1 3/4 times 2 full times, and 4 out of the 12 I need to make a third, which simplifies to 2 1/3. All right.